Hello, hello. Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I can see people chatting. Welcome. Friday before the holidays. Hey, Michael. Hey, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining. Let's see if we got this all figured out here. Should all be able to hear me and see me. Great. Oh, yeah. Thanks. Glad you liked the idea. Yeah, so welcome to our Ask Me Anything session. So the idea is simple, right? Just wanted to give everybody a time to ask questions or any thoughts or anything that that I can help you with. Based on what we do at Blue Cape Security, I see actually a good amount of names that are familiar. Some of you are currently in those trainings and everything. So yeah, welcome to people that are currently in there, people that are just joining us from anywhere in the world. Yeah, the idea is again asking questions. So if you have anything that you want me to cover, answer, discuss in this casual setting here to help you close out the year stronger or start the next year stronger or with your plans or any other technical things, whether you're just going through the courses or labs, feel free to drop your questions here. We do have, for those in the Zoom, our Q&A, and that's a good place to put them in there. You can, of course, chat as well. Keep an eye on all the chats that we have going here. But basically, yeah, this is your time as well. I see some familiar names. Happy to see people have taking time to check in here. So yeah, drop in your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. Welcome everyone again. There's some people still joining us here. Ask your questions. Let me know what you want to know, talk about here. We'll take a few minutes and hopefully help you answer some of those questions. First, to start things off, again, this is just helping me trying to help you getting more value out of the training of the Blue Cape ecosystem, or basically what do you do on a daily basis as a security professional. Um, question. Oh, so there's got a question in from Michael right away with there was previously something mentioned that we are working on a cloud-focused DFIR course, expected launch date. Yeah, that topic is definitely on our minds. We are going to have to figure out how deep and how far we want to go that route. It's definitely relevant, and there will be something soon. Hopefully, by the end of Q1 next year, we will have a good amount of content together that can help, with the different training path along those way. So cloud forensics, been doing it for a while, so I don't know trainings, but in the real world, so there's a good amount of things that we certainly need to cover, and it will be something that we definitely have some more focus on in the next few months, probably. Awesome. Yeah, Michael, you're working in as an analyst in like with cloud environments, cloud forensics, things along those lines. Maybe if you help me, like with more specifics, it's always good to hear from people what they actually do and what could actually help them um, when we create those trainings. Because basically everything we do is based on just real world experience, applicable cases. So that's how the training, all our content is basically put together. So yeah, more questions in Q&A or chat, feel free to drop them in there. I have a few questions I've answered this morning based on some of the emails I've got. The most important one is that there's constantly people asking about, where to start, where to go from there and everything. So some of you are enrolled in the training, and you might have seen there's the analyst, the core sections, the tiers. There's the analyst one, focusing very much on forensics, digital forensics, Windows forensics. And there's analyst two, where you perform more like an investigation of multi-compromise scenarios, and that's where you need to have your analyst, forensic skills under the belt, because that's where we are diving deeper into the more advanced attacks, tactics, and techniques. One thing, maybe I'll share that real quick. I think that actually might help a little bit more. Quick overview of how to get started and how to dive into the training, get the most out of it. Let me share my screen here real quick. So the idea here is hopefully makes a lot of sense. We have the core training path, which as you might have seen if you already explored it, there's a bunch of a broad variety of topics that you might come across as a security analyst in whatever capacity, right? SOC analyst, forensic analyst, incident response, threat hunting, whatever you are in the capacity you're in, even like malware, touching on all kinds of things that you should have be familiar with when you perform any kind of security roles. But within those sections, of course, we could always go deeper, but this is just building a good foundation. So if you're familiar with some sections, you might skip that. Some others are definitely relevant to probably, dive deeper so that you're ready for the next steps. So those two. Basically, that means the analyst one, you really get to learn about Windows forensics. You dive into really hands-on practical labs with the forensic investigations, and then there's even the exam. And I have a few questions that I can answer around the exam because there's questions about it on a daily basis. So happy to dive into that in a second. And when you're more advanced, analyst two is basically what you see in the real world when you do incident response, digital forensics, solving cases, ransomware cases, cybercrime, APT, advanced threats, just basically investigating compromised scenarios. And there's a course that helps to get started with the tactics, techniques, becoming familiar with like a ransomware case even. And then from there, you build your methodology. You kind of start with like the SIM analysis, remote forensics, disk forensic, memory forensics, all the way to malware analysis to put together an entire case. So that's the idea of this roadmap. And what this looks like, as you can see here, each section has a learn part, or each track has a learning part, where you have the 101 course, the 201 course, the 301 course, which literally walks you through those scenarios and investigations. And then we have the practice tracks for each of these training tracks, where you have with forensics for 200, you have the Windows forensics labs. Each one of them is something I've actually seen in the real world. It's like investigating a forensic Windows forensic case where there might have been an executive that just left and probably might have stolen files. How can you basically trace that back? How can you find evidence by performing digital forensic analysis on a disk image? Then there's a little bit more complex case where you have to dive into disk and memory analysis of a multi-system compromise, maybe an insider threat, maybe somebody clicked on something. So you might have to put together artifacts across different sources of evidence, even different systems. Same with the 003 case, where we have, somebody might have abused credentials or stolen credentials to access resources they shouldn't have. Suspicious logons, case 4, where somebody's logging onto things and that they shouldn't, and it's just something where you need to put together different sources, artifacts, again, a timeline that helps you figure out what happened, when, where, and how. So very much along the lines of real-world scenarios that you come across with a lot of insider threats, people, stealing data, accessing resources they shouldn't, things along those lines, especially in enterprise environments. But to basically make it turn it up a little bit, we also have cybercrime and APT scenarios. And this is what we just recently released. Lots of people have been jumping onto this because it's literally the real deal, right? It's like really real compromised scenarios or systems that where you come across TTPs that you see that we've remodeled based on those real world cases that are documented out there that we've seen out there, where, for example, a ransomware attack that includes a number of TTPs that you should be familiar with. So what does it look like when you investigate those TTPs as an analyst? SSH reverse tunneling, RDP abuse, and then accessing systems, lateral movement, data staging, ransomware, and so on. First case. So very much along the lines of real-world threat actors. And those are even documented. You get solutions, you get the timelines, you get the attribution to what kind of technique we've used and what kind of threat actors are commonly famously known for using those, so that you're aware of what we are learning here. The outcome should be you're familiar with what the TTPs are, how to find them, and what threat groups and actors are using those. Same for 002. So this is the IR case that is probably the most advanced one, where you have a whole lot of shenanigans going on, where there's like threat actors remodeling threat actors with TTPs that have multi-system compromises with command and control and .NET reflection execution, so more stealthy in-memory attacks where you don't have a lot of disk artifacts, not a lot of malware, lots of encryption, encrypted command and control, for example. You don't see, you can't really easily intercept or analyze for example, the network telemetry so easily in this case. We have a lot of other things where we just come across those on a ransomware case on a daily basis, where you see double roasting, process injection, and a privilege escalation from there, all the way to data theft with the real tools, the real kind of ways of TTPs or data staging TTPs that you come across on in real world cases. Again, same thing for the third case, and that one focuses more on, hey, how can we actually bypass security controls? There's a bring your own vulnerable driver privilege escalation in order to actually disable security controls, and then escalate privileges, set up command and control, inject processes, and perform, for example, credential dumping through DC sync attacks, and so on. So lots of good TTPs in many of these cases, in all of these cases where you have many things that you can take away from that apply to like real world investigations. And then you put together a timeline, and ideally you see which systems were compromised, when, where, and how. All right, and finally, with the forensics training, of course, might have seen that PWFA, Practical Windows Forensic Analyst Certification Exam, 7-day access to an exam environment where you basically are supposed to solve a case exactly along the lines of the 4-200 labs. And then if you score over 85%, you get a challenge coin, like even a physical gold coin, shipped, or passing score is 70%. So those are the different tracks. So you just get access to everything. I know many here actually have access to a number of things. And one thing that might be also interesting here real quick is this page that actually basically illustrates again, the best path moving forward. Like you start with the fundamentals, you dive deep into forensics, you dive deep into DFIR. And that basically is a very comprehensive multi-month, probably you get a year access. So basically probably a multi-month journey from there. So yeah, that's the idea of those trainings. I know many people have jumped onto this lately and started with the different tracks, which is totally fine. There's no one way to do it all, right? It's just some people have more experience than others in certain areas. So whatever works best for you, obviously. That's the best way to approach it. Now, let me see if I have questions over here. All right, a few more people joined. So everybody, let me know if you have questions. Post them in the chat, post them in a Q&A. I'm just here to answer those and hopefully help you guys getting up to speed, started, anything that can help you within as a community member of the Blue Cape ecosystem here. Now, questions about the PWFA exam I'm getting a lot is basically how does it work, right? So I don't know exactly how many other providers are doing it because I've not really taken those exams except those SANS multiple choices, but exams. But for the most part, for us, it's like you get access to a VM, you start it, you get access for 7 days, and on this VM there is the evidence, and then you have access to this VM for 7 days straight, 24/7 a day, and you just basically start analyzing based on disk images or memory images or anything along those lines. Might be multiple of those, where you then figure out what happened. And there's not much, there's not a long like incident description. It's just basically something happened, somebody accessed something maybe, and then you go from there. And what the deliverable is basically throughout our training, especially in the 4-200 course or labs, you basically can see an incident timeline. And I don't know who else here is like working as an analyst or a forensic analyst capacity. who is using like spreadsheets or timelines these days still to document forensic artifacts and finding events basically that are basically forensic evidence when you perform investigations. Because the real thing is that you have multiple sources and you draw events from that are relevant to the case, and then you basically create a timeline, right? And this is what you can see in the 4200 labs. And in those labs, you learn how to, and this is probably the most tedious, but always kind of the hardest, but at some point you get the hang of it, part where you extract data from different sources, outcomes from timelines, from different artifacts that you just parsed with Eric Zimmerman tools or from like other kinds of areas. And then you just get them all ordered in a timeline. The parsing part, the formatting part is always a little bit difficult, but that's basically how it is in real world. So you're supposed to basically build a timeline that has high fidelity, evidence of what happened on the system. And the timeline shouldn't be too verbose. So we don't need lot of like, the same kind of evidence over and events over and over again. But also you don't want to miss anything because the scoring is actually more pretty strict, turns out. That was not intended, but it means it's basically based on all the findings you can get there. And then for any finding that is not on the timeline, we basically deduct points. There's the technical analysis area where you can score up to, I think, what is it, 214 points. And then this is the technical analysis, basically on all the findings. Have you found all the things that you're supposed to find? The findings are weighted. So there's some findings that are worth a lot of points. There's some findings that are just minor and medium scoring. And then from there you have also we rate the reporting quality and completeness. So if you submit a timeline, we want to make sure that the quality, like it's not too verbose. You have we can see that you have like clearly understood the answering the objectives. You have answered the questions, basically the objectives that are part of it in your timeline, and you have shown that you have advanced skills of putting correlating events together in this timeline. And there's a couple of areas that we rate for that. So I would say, 2/3 are basically the technical findings, and 1/3 is basically weighted for the reporting quality and the completeness of it. And yeah, that's basically what it takes to pass the practical forensic analyst exam. And then with 85% and more, you get the challenge coin. There's a question on for enterprise fundamentals. Yeah. Can we start directly, or are there fundamentals to go through? Have practical skills. Not sure exactly about the question about, if it's about for the enterprise fundamentals course and where to start. I would definitely recommend starting in the beginning because there's a few areas that people found surprising that it's like something that you don't see in other trainings. For example, we talk a lot about visibility, right? Like all we do basically we're dependent on visibility, telemetry and visibility that we can find or we can prevent anything that we don't see. So we basically discuss, first of all, what does it take to cover, to improve the visibility within an enterprise environment? What kind of tools can you use? What kind of techniques can you use? What do you need to keep in mind from an endpoint perspective, from a network perspective, all kinds of areas. And then from there, we put it together to basically say, okay, this is all you should be knowing or seeing and doing in order to even be able to prevent things, catch things, analyze things. And then from there, we start into diving into the technique. So it's a step-by-step course. It actually has, basically it's following step by step later on the kill chain basically of a attack scenario where we learn first about initial access techniques, lateral movement techniques, endpoint compromise techniques, things along those lines. And one thing that might actually be helpful is I want to share that real quick as well, because I think that's cool. We have a full syllabus where you can see in the spreadsheet, where you can see all the topics that we're touching on. Going to cover that real quick and share that with you. To clarify, yeah, the question was more about prerequisites on this course. Yeah, I don't think really you need a prerequisites. Things are explained pretty fundamentally. I would say it's a refresher for those people who have seen this before, and it's actually something that if you have, if you're professional, then you should in the security industry, then you should be able to follow the course as well. And so one thing you can see here is sharing again. With our on-demand courses, there's syllabus for each one of those. And that will hopefully help to demonstrate all the things you learn in this course. So for example, here, this is the one-on-one course. These are the different domains, categories, and topics. As you can see here, everything that has bigger, everything that here has a lab prefix is basically literally a hands-on lab. And you can see that we have 39 labs and 28 lectures. So you can basically assume this is extremely hands-on. You just basically follow screen sharing and hands-on methodologies. Enterprise domain environments, again, basics around Active Directory, group policies, enterprise domains, login telemetry visibility. Like I was saying earlier, this is important to set the stage, right? And then we go about attacking and analyzing different attack tactics and techniques. So initial access techniques, phishing, external device exploitation. This is actually a Fortinet log that was subject to an SQL injection attack of a real environment, actually. Then we have living with the LAMP binaries, what it takes to understand, detect, understand what the attackers can use them for, what to look for. Discovery, credential attacks, you perform credential attacks, and by doing so, you learn how to actually, what you need to know about it, as well as what an attacker needs to know about it, and then how we can potentially detect and prevent those things. That's the idea. That's the idea of all of the training. That's why it's very much like attack first and analyze second. Endpoint compromises, network telemetry and security, malware triage. So just, this is basically what everybody should have in the tool belt, all these things in order to be able to successfully perform investigation, for example. And then with the same thing for the forensics course, the forensics syllabus, and the enterprise DFIR syllabus for forensics. It's basically we start with the forensic process, what that goes into data collection, examination, and parsing. And then from there, we go into disk analysis, Windows registry, user behavior, file systems, artifacts, execution artifacts, persistence artifacts, and then event logs, and then from there, memory. And then one thing that I don't think that's out there a lot, how to perform timeline analysis using log to timeline, for example, and then how to analyze actually a timeline with all the kinds of data that is in there. So something that I've learned and have been doing a lot as a forensic analyst, and I think it's important for people to be aware of this approach because it can actually sometimes answer questions you would have not found out otherwise. And then with that, we have the enterprise DFIR syllabus as well here, as you can see. It starts off with a real case. It starts off with ransomware. So basically, here's a ransomware scenario. Let's talk about everything you need to know about ransomware attacks, tactics, techniques, the ransomware attack lifecycle of how typically ransomware plays out in enterprise environments. And then from there, you start an analysis. We start with network traffic analysis. You get PCAPs and seek logs, and analyze from there. What do you find out about the compromise? Command and control, initial access, things like that, malware that might have been pushed around. Then we have log analysis. This is a very comprehensive section in Splunk. We have lots of visibility. That's why we have lots of logs. That's why we have a lot of things to find across the entire scenario. You can see here, there's like 10 or more Splunk labs. Then we learn a quick primer on how to use Sigma detection rules and apply them in Splunk as well. Then we have for remote forensics, so how you can actually use a tool called Velociraptor, similar along the lines of, if you're not familiar with Velociraptor, similar along the lines of a incident response, a remote forensics tool, or like an EDR kind of tooling because that allows us to remotely analyze systems. And there's probably 10 labs or so in there as well. And then we have the diving deeper into forensic analysis, disk images and memory images of compromised systems, multiple compromised systems. Then we basically pull malware from it and analyze the malware and then put it all into a timeline. And from there, you can actually then learn based on the log to timeline chapters in the previous course that we have also provided you with this kind of with the data from log to timeline outputs with the real timelines and put them into Splunk as well as TimeSketch. For those who have seen TimeSketch before, it's really cool for you to analyze, to see really what it looks like in TimeSketch to have a multi-system compromise log to timeline output in your analysis tooling. And yeah, that hopefully helps with preparing you for with a methodology that helps you in analyzing a ransomware incident, and then you apply the exact same methodology and the exact same process on those lab environments where you have real world cases like ransomware and APT scenarios. So that's the idea of the trainings that you have access to in again, the Blue Cape ecosystem here. I see there's a few more questions. So basically, let me just go back to those real quick. Again, anyone who's just joined us, let me know if you have more questions or has this been helpful so far? If not, I can talk about other things. If yes, then that's great to hear as well. So give me a thumbs up or something. Let me know what else you'd want us to talk about. So just getting a question here real quick on. Oh, yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Just somebody was just saying that they really like the hero bundle and access to all the training. All right. So a few other things. One thing about training. So what I've seen was actually about training about putting timelines together from investigations. I have a link here. So along the lines of, we provide a timeline template when it comes to the Practical Windows Forensics Analyst exam, those cases, or even for the IR 300 cases. So we have a timeline template, a spreadsheet, but CrowdStrike actually, for those who didn't know, put out a timeline, a sample timeline that everybody can use. And this, I think, is really impressive. I'm going to post it in the chat because that is something that you can absolutely also use for the forensic exam or as you go through these investigations. And hopefully you can use that as an inspiration or even implement it in your own organization, because that is a very impressive timeline. Maybe I'll just go ahead and also open it up here real quick. It's a very impressive template. One sec here. There you go. So basically the link I just posted here provides you with a spreadsheet. And it looks like this. This is the CrowdStrike incident response incident tracker. So you have tabs, and within those tabs, there's different areas, such as, for example, here, investigation notes. So here's where you keep track of meetings, investigation notes, of communication, things along those lines. So ideally, in a larger scale enterprise incident response investigation, you have multiple people, teams working on this, and there's usually somebody dedicated as a scribe, keeping track of everything, right? So you basically have somebody filling out the incident investigation notes with contact information. So this is a really great template to apply as a consultant or even in-house. And then here we have the full timeline, right? This is where we capture events. Sure, if that's too small, see if I can make it bigger. But the events basically are exactly like the timelines that we are using in forensics and the DFIR cases in the training. So it's basically, there's a little more here, but not all of them, I would say, necessarily need to be used. But you have dates for the events, the activity that happened, the evidence source, details about the source, what attack TTPs it aligns with, MITRE ATT&CK TTPs, hashes of malware, nodes to it. So this is basically a timeline where you just fill in everything you find, all the events. Then we have the systems that we want to keep track of, systems of interest for a case, with accounts that might be compromised of interest during the case. Host indicators. So here we have host indicators, for example, malware, commenting malware and payloads, anything on an endpoint that you might find out that was an indicator of compromise. Network indicators of compromise, classic in this case, domains, IP addresses, things along those lines. And then there's tasks. You can assign tasks, delegate tasks. So this is even an incident management tool, right? It's like a incident tracker or a case management where you can assign tasks and then you can keep track of who is working on what. So for example, if you have a dozen or so systems that need to be analyzed, you delegate those to your team. You can see who is assigned to and so on. Evidence tracker. This is all the sources where, for example, you can keep track of the disk images, memory images, log files, any PCAPs, whatever evidence has been provided to you as part of this. And this is cool. I think forensic keywords, sometimes you need a starting point. You need to know what you're looking for, like something that gets you going. So keywords or some kind of indicators of compromise, or just the keywords itself, high fidelity keywords, then help you to start a forensic analysis. Can be tracked here. And here's, for example, queries. So for example, if you have queries in Splunk, you want to put them in here for everybody so they don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You keep them going faster, more efficient. So that's why I think this is a really cool tool. All right. Hey, Luke, thanks for joining. Awesome. Great to see you too here. Somebody was asking, is it possible to take training without the exam? Of course, yeah, the exam is just on top of everything. Once you feel confident, when you got through all the labs, obviously, of course, feel free to jump into the exam, but obviously, of course, not a requirement. All right. Let's see. Any other questions? Or anything that I wanted to cover? I'm just curious for those who are on here, drop me a note either in the um, comments or in the Q&A, or message me directly what you are and what you need, what you're interested in, what else you want to see, or outside of the ask me anything here in terms of training. I'm always interested, obviously, of course, and hear how you're doing and what we can do to make things better. Finally, Michael pointed out, don't forget to plug the challenge coins. Yes, happy to do that. We have, for the forensics training, that might make me switch gears here real quick again with my screen sharing. One sec. We have challenge coins and they look like this. See if I can find them in a second here. It's actually also a good something that is definitely good to know about doing if you're planning on doing the exam itself. There's a blog post about what it takes to do the exam, and I'm gonna put the link in here. You can find what it takes, foundations, backgrounds, inside the exam, what it's like. So this is our write-up. Actually, if you follow us in Blue Cape Security on LinkedIn, you can actually see what others. There's 2 or 3 other people that have already written blog posts about it, which is really awesome. And here we go. Really cool. I just got an order of 100 challenge coins last week. So if I'm hoping there's more people that are gonna pass the 85% score, because we have 100 of those still sitting around here. We have given out plenty before, but now there's another order that just came in. They are really cool. All right, let's just see 2 questions. Let me get to those real quick. Do you have any examples of completed timelines for reference. Exactly, yes. If you open up those trainings, the training tracks, actually, I can't see that right now, I'm not sharing, but let me get into my account real quick. You can every single scenario comes with a full solution. So the full solution is basically what happened, how did it happen, a little write-up in the forensics labs as well as in the DFIR labs, in the IR labs. And then all of them basically have a timeline with them. So let's say, so this is the dashboard if you log in. For those who haven't seen it yet, pretty cool because we just updated that to make it a little bit more slick and easier to find things. You have your courses, the different tracks. And so, for example, if you open, let me open this one real quick. If you're in the forensic labs, that's exactly what you get. You get, as long as I'm enrolled here, yes, four investigation scenarios all in one course. And then you get the case, you get a quiz, you get a reflection on what just happened basically on this in this case, and then you get a timeline analysis solution with timeline and a solution with a summary report. So basically, timeline analysis means you can download our version or my version of how I analyzed this case and what did I put in timeline. It's not 100%, the one-day way to do things. There's a lot of different ways, and actually, some of those exam submissions were so impressive. There were some techniques used that I wasn't aware of, so that was actually really cool because I'm learning a lot too. But it's basically it would be enough to basically get to the idea of everything that happened and how to document and how to put those timelines together. So yeah, this is the same. You can do the same for the IR 300s. That is a little bit more advanced, comprehensive. Those timelines are much, much bigger, but that's where you can download them. Let's see if I go in there real quick. I don't think I would spoil anything. Actually, I will, but just a little bit, so that's fine. Basically, you can download the timeline, the spreadsheet right here, and then there's some high-level things of systems that were covered, user profiles, and then here you can already see sections of the timeline. Something happened here, and then something for staging happened here. Here's our evidence. So there's some write-ups based on the timelines with explanations to make it even easier for you. You can download the full timeline. And since we're on it, on the IR cases, that might actually also make sense to jump into these real quick. Those are even more comprehensive. So let me get into those. So those are the cases. You need to be aware of the environment because there's lots of settings, right? Like, what kind of logging is turned on, do you get PCAPs or not, what kind of visibility you have. So there's some overview of the environment. And then you dive right into the lab. And when you're done, you can get the solution in terms of timeline, you can get the TTPs, and you can get some recap and takeaways. So this is basically just, hey, what to look for when you download the timeline. And the timeline is very comprehensive. And then in the next case, you will actually see what kind of highlights that the attacker basically executed in this environment. So this is what the attacker was using. You can even see attacker screenshots. This is what it looked like when the attacker was on. And this is the threat group overlap, right? This is the APTs that have been using similar or same techniques documented that we've seen, very common and current ones, APT 29, 28, some ransomware groups, and so on. Then the attack tactics, techniques. And then some of the most important things is basically recaps and takeaways. What do you need to, as an analyst, take away from this? What should you be aware of? Okay. Initial access happened this way, persistence happened that way, and so on. So you can get the idea. I'm not going to spoil the whole scenario here, but just want to show you this is all the solution information and takeaways, from those scenarios too. It's not just you hands-on doing it, but actually learning, hopefully taking away a lot of it. Hey, Chad. Yeah, thanks for joining. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you as well. Hope to get heavy into DFIR learning in 2026 with the courses. Oh, makes me happy. Thanks. Merry Christmas over there as well. All right. See. if we have any other questions. If not, we might just wrap it up in a second here. For those who are logged in, for those who don't have access to the trainings yet, you might have seen that. Here's the lab VM, but actually for that you need access to the paid training. But there's free training, right? So if you're not in there yet, there's a bunch of courses, tutorials you can take, and a bunch of webinars you can rewatch, like a whole number that we recorded previously, and even a whole tabletop exercise. And then you can see your achievements, your certificates, your badges over here. For the free training, highly recommend the DFIR Foundations course. That is free, but it's actually pretty comprehensive. So it talks a lot about everything you need to know in terms of DFIR, and then it has samples you can download and analyze for free. So as you can see here, first we talk about threat landscape, forensic concepts, tools for DFIR. Secondly, we talk about security operations, incident response, data collection, forensic analysis in depth. And then, and all of these things are basically carried out in within the data set that is provided there. So here you can download the data set for free. Again, I think it's a disk image and logs, the memory image. And then from there, you just learn how to basically, perform the lab using the PCAP even. I forgot we even have a PCAP for that to analyze. Then you learn how we analyze the logs in Splunk, and you learn how you can analyze the memory images and disk images and perform timeline analysis. And the coolest part, as always, we want to know what happened in the environment so that we can actually learn too, right? What we can take away from this case is a video, but it's going to talk about everything that happened in this scenario. So very cool. And I think it helps a lot to understand attack tactics, techniques to learn from those. What, first of all, did we find everything? What were we supposed to find? How does it look? What does it look like? How were we supposed to find it? And then be better able to be prepared and actually have some takeaways from there. Oh, thanks, Luis. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks for joining. I feel like we're getting more and more people here. So if you have more questions, let me know. Not sure if there's anything else that I should have could have covered. Let me see. Yeah, I just want to know from you. Send me a message, email, join our Discord or anything, and let me know what you want to see or hear about more. What would help you? A few things I can't fully disclose yet are coming for early next year. Talked about some of those things earlier in the call, but in this meeting, but it's just a new format and a few more things. So if you're already in the ecosystem, you will have the Blue Cape training ecosystem. You will have access to a few fun more things early next year. I'm looking forward to that for sure. All right. Other than that, I'm not seeing more questions. Might just wrap it up. So I hope this was helpful. Again, just a quick idea to ask questions and answer questions before the end of the year. Anything that some people are motivated or actually are taking time over the holidays to get into training. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. For those who are taking time off and have big plans for next year, same thing. Hopefully it was helpful to you, and I very much appreciate everybody joining in today, being part of our community. Really cool to have everybody around. It's actually growing quite a lot. So feel free to hang around in our Discord and keep the conversations going there, and reach out if you need anything or have any questions with your training. This hopefully was helpful as well to get you going. So yeah, whatever it takes, I'm always open for feedback as well. But really cool to have everybody around, and happy holidays, everybody. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the nice messages. Let's wrap this up. So happy New Year and happy holidays. Cheers. Thanks, everybody.